The marble floors were slick beneath my custom Vera Wang heels. I focused on the feeling. The dress was heavy, thick silk, a ridiculous $35,000 mistake. My heart was a drum in my chest, a frantic beat drowning out the string quartet. 300 faces blurred past me, all smiling, all fooled. Marcus stood at the end of the aisle. My fiancé, my betrayer. He looked flawless in his Italian bespoke suit. He was smiling wide, that confident, teeth-flashing grin, the same grin that had charmed the pants off my family, my professors, and every investor he met. He was the perfect con man. I didn't stop at the altar. I kept walking, the train of the dress sweeping past the flower arrangements. Marcus's smile flickered. Confusion crossed his face. He mouthed, "Alara, what are you doing?" I reached the head table. I didn't even glance at my maid of honor, Vivian, my sweet, supportive cousin, the second villain in this tragedy. The entire ballroom was silent now. The string quartet had finally stopped. The officiant looked panicked. I felt the remote trigger in my white glove. I pressed the button once. The massive 20-foot LED screen behind the altar, moments ago displaying a saccharine montage of our perfect love story, snapped to black. Then it flared blinding white. A document appeared. It was stark, black and white legalese. The title was centered: Emergency Cease and Desist Order, Civil Seizure Warrant. The room erupted. 300 guests gasped as one. Marcus finally moved. He sprinted toward me, his face a mask of terror. "What is this, Alara? Stop it." He reached out to grab my arm. My hand shot up, stopping him cold. I barely looked at him. "Don't touch me, Marcus," I said. My voice was low, perfectly clear, amplified by the tiny mic clipped into my veil. "That is a legally binding court order." He stared at the screen, his breath hitching. The text scrolled down, listing names and entities. Defendant 1, Marcus Elliott Thorne. Defendant 2, Vivian May Chen. Defendant 2, the Marcus Group, LLC. Vivian let out a strangled, high-pitched scream from the side of the altar. Marcus's eyes, usually a charming bright blue, wet flack and dark. He saw his name. He saw his company. He saw the end. That's when the caterers moved. 4 tall, extremely serious men in pristine white shirts and black bow ties simultaneously dropped their serving trays. They didn't even make a sound. They smoothly pulled badges from their jackets. US Federal Marshals. 2 moved to block the main exit. 1 moved directly toward Marcus. The 4th walked straight to Vivian, who was now weeping hysterically. The marshal addressing Marcus held up a folder. "Mr. Thorne, we are executing a corporate and personal asset seizure under injunction. You are also served with papers related to intellectual property theft and systematic fraud." Marcus went white, not just pale and absolute corpse-like white. His knees wobbled slightly. "IP theft," my father shouted from the front row. My mother started to cry, but she was watching the screen, not me. The screen shifted again. The legal text was replaced by a stunning, complex architectural rendering. It was the design, my design, the culmination of 5 years of my life. Beneath the image, 3 bullet points appeared. 1. Original copyright Elora Chen, 2024. 2. Valuation of stolen contract, $42.50 million. 3. Amount funneled into Kona, wedding expenses, $2.10 million. Awesome. The silence was deafening. The only sound was Vivian's wretched, gasping sobs and the rustle of the marshal's starch-white shirts. I finally turned to Marcus, who was trying desperately to read the screen over the marshal's shoulder. He was trapped. His wedding, his grand stage, was now his cage. "You built your empire on my blueprint, Marcus," I whispered, loud enough for the mic to catch every word. "And you used my cousin to keep me distracted while you did it." The marshal gently but firmly placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Sir, we need you to come with us." Marcus shook his head, looking directly into my eyes, searching for a flicker of the old Alara, the one who was weak, the one who forgave easily. He found nothing. "Alara, please, it's a mistake. We can fix this. We're getting married." He tried the charm one last time. I tilted my head, my diamond tiara catching the light. "No, Marcus, you are getting sued and arrested. I've already signed the annulment papers." I felt a surge of cold, pure satisfaction. This was not just revenge. This was a demolition. The marshal led Marcus away, past the horrified guests. Vivian was escorted out the side door, wrapped in a marshal's jacket to hide her shame. I stood there, still in the gown, the smoke rising from the wreckage. My work was safe, my future was secure, but to understand how I got here, walking past the man who destroyed my career and my family, I need to back up. I need to tell you how it all began. I met Marcus Thorne in a required seminar. It was advanced parametric facade design. I was a final year graduate student at Yale, utterly obsessed with architecture. My passion was the synthesis of organic form and sustainable engineering. I lived for the CAD program. Marcus was older, a postgrad who had supposedly taken a gap year to launch a consulting firm. He wasn't really a great designer. His sketches were derivative. His technical drawings were sloppy, but he had presence. He dressed sharp, smelled expensive, and talked a good game about disrupting the built environment. He targeted me immediately. I was head down, buried in my laptop, refining a complex solar tracking structural detail. "Is that a reciprocal frame system?" he asked, leaning over my shoulder. His voice was smooth velvet. I barely looked up. "It's a tensile structure optimized for variable load deflection." I immediately regretted using jargon. He didn't miss a beat. "Brilliant, but the load distribution calculation looks slightly inefficient on the z-axis bracing." He was wrong, but he said it with such authority, I was instantly intrigued. I spent the next hour arguing with him. It wasn't about the design. It was about his sheer, unshakable confidence. He wasn't arrogant. He was certain. That certainty was intoxicating. Soon we were inseparable. He focused on the business side of architecture, the clients, the networking, the funding. I focused on the actual creation. I designed. He sold the idea of the design. It felt like a perfect partnership. I was the brain. He was the mouth. Our initial red flag should have been neon flashing. It was subtle then. I would pull all-nighters, crafting a detailed BIM model for a competition. Marcus would stop by at 7 a.m., bring me coffee, and ask to review the file. He would edit the project title. He would clean up the file metadata. He always needed access. He said he was just learning, trying to catch up. He always made me feel supported. "You're the genius, Alara," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "I just want to make sure your genius gets seen by the right people." I loved hearing that. It validated my long hours. It blinded me to the fact that he was downloading my intellectual property one clean file at a time. Then there was Vivian, my cousin. We grew up practically sisters. She was 2 years older. She was stunningly beautiful, but she struggled perpetually in her career as a freelance event planner. She had always been a step behind me. She was always the bridesmaid, never the architect. She masked her jealousy with over-the-top sweetness. When Marcus and I got engaged a year ago, she insisted on being my maid of honor. She took control of the wedding planning with a vengeance. "Alara, you need to focus on your career," she told me constantly. "I'll handle the seating charts and the 3 different types of canapes. I'm good at this stuff. You're good at the big stuff." She made me feel like the delicate genius who shouldn't be bothered with trivial logistics. I was grateful. I was working on the biggest project of my life, the magnum opus, the design that would launch my career. It was a massive multi-use tower concept focused on sustainable modularity and vertical hydroponics. I called it the Aether Project. I poured every waking moment into Aether. I had to secure the copyright and patent before submitting it to the International Future Cities competition. I trusted Marcus implicitly. We had started sharing a joint cloud server for all our important files. Mine were protected by 2-factor authentication. Marcus, the smooth talker, convinced me to disable the second factor. "Babe, we are about to be married," he reasoned, holding my hand. "It feels insane that I need a code just to grab the wedding budget spreadsheet when you're asleep. It just slows down the workflow." He never slowed down the workflow. He only sped up the data transfer. I remember the exact moment the theft truly began. It was a Tuesday. I was wrestling with the final lighting simulation for Aether. It was beautiful, but the rendering was crashing my machine. Marcus came home, looking stressed. He complained about his consulting firm struggling. "I wish I had your drive, Alara," he sighed dramatically, pulling me close. "I wish I had a project as revolutionary as yours." That night, he asked for a complete copy of my master Aether file. "Just for backup," he said. "What if your hard drive fails before the competition? I'll put it on my secure corporate server." I hesitated for a split second. Then I dismissed the doubt. He was my fiancé, my partner, the man I was building a life with. I zipped the 800 gigabytes folder and uploaded it to our shared cloud. I watched the progress bar slowly climb. It felt like a transfer of trust. It was actually a transfer of ownership, and I had just handed him the blueprint to destroy me. The engagement period became a suffocating fog. I was juggling too many balls. I had to finish the Aether Project. I had to keep up appearances at the wedding venue walkthroughs. I felt constantly exhausted, mentally drained. Marcus suddenly became incredibly wealthy, not overnight, but rapidly. He said his consulting firm had pivoted. He claimed he was connecting investors with tech startups in the urban planning sector. He was constantly traveling. He bought a new, obscenely expensive watch. He insisted on upgrading the wedding budget. "Only the best for my future wife, the future Pritzker Prize winner," he declared, ordering imported truffles for the appetizer menu. The price tag for the wedding soared. It hit $2 million, maybe more. I should have asked where the money came from. I was too busy modeling the vertical wind farms for Aether. Vivian became Marcus's shadow. They were constantly on calls, discussing vendors, budgets, and seating arrangements. They were a unified front. I should have recognized the intimacy of their conspiracy. I just thought it was the intimacy of wedding planners. Vivian kept pushing me away from the logistics. She wanted me to focus on my dress fittings and my beauty regimen. "You look tired, Elara. Take a spa day," she urged, giving me a gift certificate. It was a strategic move. Every hour I spent getting a hot stone massage was an hour she and Marcus had unsupervised access to my apartment and my computer. I started noticing strange things in my workspace. Minor details, but they chipped away at my focus. My desk looked wrong. The post-it notes I used to track my design changes were subtly shuffled. My secondary monitor, which I always kept logged into my corporate server, was occasionally logged out. I confronted Marcus once. "Did you use my computer last night?" He looked genuinely surprised. "No, babe. Why would I? Was the cleaning lady here? Maybe she unplugged something." He was already pivoting the blame. He sounded so innocent. His eyes were wide and sincere. I believed him. The most disturbing development was the feeling of my work. The Aether Project was losing its soul. It felt like I was working with someone else's file. My computer was laggy. My cloud usage was maxed out, but I hadn't uploaded anything new. I ran deep diagnostic scans. I found nothing. No malware. No keylogger. Marcus was too smart for that. He was using my credentials, the ones I had given him for backup, to perform clean, authorized downloads. He was using the shared server as a covert transfer hub. The pressure mounted. The future city competition submission deadline was in 1 month. The wedding was in 1 week. I was trying to write the technical abstract for Aether. It was the prose that explained the complex engineering. I opened my draft. It was corrupted, not maliciously deleted, just a garbled mess of characters. Hours of technical writing were gone. I flew into a panic. I called Marcus, who was supposedly on a last-minute business trip for his new venture. "Marcus, my abstract is gone. I can't recover the file." I was hyperventilating. He was calm, almost soothing. "Deep breaths, Alara." "Deep breaths. You probably saved an old version. I know you're stressed. Just focus on the main structure. You can rewrite the text when I get home." He dismissed my panic as wedding stress. He made me feel irrational. He was banking on my emotional exhaustion. He knew the files were fine. His copies, that is. Vivian showed up with champagne and a fake tan smile. "Bridal meltdown. Happens to the best of us. Let's go look at the final flower mock-up." You need a distraction. I went. I let them distract me. I let them treat me like a high-maintenance doll who only cared about table settings and centerpieces. I focused on the trivial while they stole the entirety of my intellectual life. I spent the next 3 days rewriting the abstract from scratch, fueled by caffeine and sheer will. I missed my final dress fitting. I missed the rehearsal dinner prep meeting. Marcus and Vivian handled everything. They were running a professional operation. The wedding was the final distraction. The grand finale meant to bury me under a sea of debt and silk while they walked away multi-millionaires. The only thing that kept me going was a stubborn architect's pride. My design was brilliant. I knew it, and that knowledge, that single, pure, uncorrupted knowledge of my own creation was the only thing they hadn't been able to steal. They stole the files, but they couldn't steal the core idea. Yet. The competition deadline loomed. I submitted a hastily finished version, feeling deeply dissatisfied. The real, perfect version was already in Marcus's hands. It felt like I was losing control of everything. My work was suffering. My energy was depleted. I was about to marry a man who made me feel constantly small and frantic. I didn't recognize my life anymore. I just kept pushing forward, convinced that once the wedding passed, I would have my life and my Aether Project back. I was catastrophically wrong. The end of my life as I knew it was rapidly approaching. The breaking point arrived 3 days before the ceremony. It was a Thursday. Marcus was supposed to be back from his investor trip, but his flight was delayed. I was alone in our apartment, surrounded by stacks of final wedding contracts and boxes of personalized favors. I felt hollow. I was looking for the car keys to run a last-minute errand. I spotted a laptop bag I didn't recognize tucked behind a coat in the closet. It was sleek black leather, expensive, and definitely not mine. It was Marcus's. He must have rushed home and left it before taking his carry-on for the delayed flight. My gut clenched. It wasn't a logical thought. It was pure animal instinct. He lied. He hadn't been home in 3 days. I zipped it open. Inside was a high-end silver laptop. It was encrypted. I tried his usual passwords. Our anniversary, my birthday, his dog's name. Nothing. I was about to give up. Then I tried Vivian's birthday 2024. It clicked open. The sudden, brutal violation of privacy didn't even register. I was driven by a sick curiosity. The desktop wallpaper was a photo of Marcus and Vivian. They weren't smiling at the camera. They were laughing intimately, their heads pressed close together, clearly on a beach somewhere tropical. This wasn't a wedding planning photo. This was a couple. My hands started shaking so violently I almost dropped the laptop. The blood drained from my face. Betrayal. It was always betrayal. But this was more. I navigated to his documents. I found a massive folder labeled Aether Group Final Launch. I opened it. Inside were all my proprietary files, the CAD drawings, the detailed energy consumption reports, the full-color 3D structural models, my magnum opus. The file I had just submitted to the competition, the one I thought was the best in the world. Then I saw the file that shattered me completely. It was a high-resolution, glossy PDF. The Marcus Group pitch deck. I opened the deck. The first slide showed a rendering of a magnificent, modular vertical tower. The Aether Project. My tower. The title read, Marcus Group, the next generation of sustainable cities. My name was nowhere. The lead architect was listed as Marcus E. Thorne. Oh no. The chief creative officer, Vivian Meters. Chen. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. I gasped. A painful wheezing sound. It felt like my ribs were snapping inward. I clicked through the deck. It wasn't just my design. It was my philosophy. Marcus had stolen my work, rebranded it, and given my own cousin a title in the fraudulent company. The pitch deck detailed a recent, successful funding round. A massive $50 million contract with an investment consortium in Dubai. The dates of the funding rounds perfectly aligned with the dates of the major wedding upgrades, the truffle appetizers, the $20,000 ice sculpture, the absurd Vera Wang dress. It wasn't love money. It was stolen money. It was my money. I found the encrypted chat logs next. The file was called V&M_budget_chats. I opened it. The messages stretched back a year. Vivian, Did she upload the final structural analysis? Need to grab it now before she wakes up. Marcus, just got it. She's busy freaking out about the seating chart. You're a genius distraction. Marcus, the Dubai deal is closing. We're getting the deposit next week. $10 million. That covers the venue and leaves enough for the down payment on the Porsche you wanted. Vivian, she actually thinks I care about the centerpieces. It's pathetic. Marcus, she's so wrapped up in her art, she won't look up until we've cashed out. She's too trusting. The words burned into my retina. Pathetic. Too trusting. They weren't just stealing my career. They were laughing at me. They were mocking my ambition, my creativity, my core personality. I stood up too fast. The room swam. I stumbled to the bathroom, falling hard against the cool marble tile. I started to heave. Nothing came up. I was dry heaving from pure emotional trauma. I dragged myself up, looking at my reflection. My eyes were wild, bloodshot. The face of a woman who had just been professionally and personally eviscerated. The woman who was supposed to be a bride in 3 days. The moment of despair lasted maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes of absolute, crushing silence. Then, the architect in me took over. I wasn't an emotional, naive graduate student anymore. I was a professional, betrayed woman who had just been handed a roadmap of a 2-person corporate conspiracy. Architects don't panic when a building collapses. They analyze the structural failure. They salvage the foundation. They rebuild bigger. I walked back to the laptop. My hands were steady now. The trembling was gone, replaced by a cold, surgical calm. I opened a clean document and started writing. It wasn't a Reading speech. It was a list of evidence. Ostum, IP theft proof, file timestamps, my original submissions, Marcus Group pitch deck. 2. Conspiracy proof, chat logs between Neaters and V. 3. Fraud proof, alignment of contract deposits and wedding expense invoices. I took the laptop, wrapped it in a towel, and tucked it into my most secure professional carry case. I deleted all the temporary files on my own machine. I was going dark. The weeping Alara was dead. The vengeful architect was in charge. The wedding was still on, but the script had just been rewritten. It wasn't a celebration. It was a hostile takeover. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry again. Crying felt like a waste of highly valuable tactical energy. I made 3 pots of black coffee and started working the phones. My first call was to Professor Silas Davies. He was a retired corporate litigation shark from my graduate school days. He had always respected my work ethic. I kept the call short, professional, and devastatingly factual. Professor Davies, I said, my voice low and flat. I have absolute proof of felony IP theft, corporate fraud, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The defendants are my fiancé and my cousin. The asset is a $42 million contract based on my architectural design. The execution will take place this Sunday at the Grand Trianon Ballroom. He was silent for a full 10 seconds. Davies was a man who had seen everything. Elora, he finally rasped. That is, spectacular. Tell me the endgame. The endgame, I replied, staring at my Vera Wang gown hanging pristine on the door, is a public, legally sanctioned corporate seizure and arrest. I want every single guest to witness the collapse of his fraudulent empire. I want the shame to be permanent, Davies was in. He said he hadn't had this much fun in 20 years. He assembled a crack team of litigators and copyright specialists. We had 72 hours. The first step was securing the injunction. We worked in shifts. I provided the evidence, the copied Aether files, the chat logs, the fraudulent LLC registration papers. Davies' team worked the legal system like surgeons. They secured the temporary restraining order, TRO, on the Marcus Group LLC's assets, freezing all bank accounts, investment portfolios, and known properties, including Marcus's precious Porsche. The key was the location. Since the wedding expenses were demonstrably paid for with the proceeds of the fraud, we traced the wire transfers from the Dubai deposit. The wedding itself was considered a legally involved asset. This allowed us to execute the seizure at the venue. Davies arranged for the federal marshals. The marshals were not excited about crashing a $2 million wedding. I convinced him. I emphasized the scale of the fraud and the necessity of surprise. They will be distracted, uniformed, and contained, I explained to the lead marshal on a secure line. The guests are upper echelon investors and family members. If you seize the assets publicly, the reputation damage is instant and irreversible. That's more effective than any fine. We developed the cover story, caterers. The wedding venue was vast. They could easily blend in. The marshals were fitted for white shirts and black bow ties. I even ordered extra trays and thermal bags for them to carry. My part was psychological. I had to continue acting like the naive, overwhelmed bride. I had a long, tearful call with Marcus that evening. "I'm so worried about your trip, darling. I just miss you so much." I was acting the role of a desperate fiancé. He ate it up. He was smug. He thought I was emotionally dependent on him. "Don't worry, future Mrs. Thorne. Everything is perfect. Just relax. You deserve this." He was radiating self-satisfaction. It was nauseating. I had a coffee with Vivian the next day. She was bubbling with fake excitement. She gave me a gift, a personalized photo album of us growing up. "I'm so happy for you, Elora." She lied, squeezing my hand. "It's your time to shine." I stared into her eyes. I saw the calculated effort. I smiled back. "Thank you, Vivian. You've been the most amazing maid of honor." I was setting the stage for her downfall. I worked with the AV team at the venue, under the pretense of finalizing the love story montage. I had the original digital files of the entire wedding montage. I secretly added a 30-second loop at the end of the timeline. It was a high-resolution file containing the seizure warrant and the Aether Project rendering. I made sure the remote trigger was synced to my hidden device. Davies and his team created the final documents, the seizure order, the IP infringement declaration, and the signed annulment papers. The annulment was critical. I wasn't just ending the marriage. I was declaring that the entire premise of our relationship was based on fraud, nullifying it completely. Saturday night, the night before the wedding. I sat in my empty apartment. Marcus was in a hotel suite across town, following the ridiculous tradition of not seeing the bride. I checked the marshal's deployment schedule. Everything was confirmed. I pulled out the Vera Wang gown. It was heavy, beautiful, and criminally expensive. I looked at the price tag, paid for with my stolen genius. I felt nothing but cold resolve. That dress was no longer a symbol of romance. It was a uniform of war. My weapon was intellect. My target was ruin. I went to bed, the quietest I had been in months. I was finally ready for the show. The walk down the aisle felt like slow motion. The music was Bach's Cello Suite No. 1. The light streaming through the massive ballroom windows was blinding. I was utterly present. Every movement was precise. The hook described the first moments, the non-stop walk, the press of the remote, the blinding flash of the seizure warrant on the giant screen. Now, Marcus was cornered. He was stammering, trying to appeal to the crowd, the guests, anyone. "This is insane. A joke, Alara. We are getting married. Someone call security," Marcus bellowed, trying to wrest the screen remote from my grasp. I pulled it back, tucking it into my glove. "Security works for the marshals now, Marcus," I stated calmly. "The Marcus Group, LLC, has been seized. This venue is currently under federal injunction. You have no authority here." The lead marshal stepped forward, his bow tie slightly askew, but his expression stern. He handed Marcus the thick stack of legal documents. "Read them, Mr. Thorne. This is serious. Intellectual property theft, corporate wire fraud, and conspiracy." Marcus's eyes scanned the first page. The color drained from his face again. He recognized the official seals. He recognized the signature of Professor Davies, the corporate lawyer in him, the one I had once admired, recognized that this was not a prank. This was ruin. Vivian, my maid of honor, stumbled forward. She was hysterical. Her face was a mess of smeared makeup. "Elora, stop! He's lying! Marcus, tell her it's a mistake! She's crazy!" Vivian shrieked, pointing at me. I finally turned to her. My voice dropped to a razor-sharp whisper that carried perfectly across the ballroom. "Vivian," I said her name like a curse. "You weren't just the distraction. You were the co-conspirator. Chief Creative Officer of the Marcus Group, were you not? The screen immediately updated. It showed the cropped picture of Marcus and Vivian laughing on the beach. Below it, a line of text, Vivian Chen, 50% shareholder, the Marcus Group LLC. Vivian stopped mid-shriek. Her mouth hung open. She was trapped. I stepped away from the altar, moving toward the assembled guests. This was the performance. This was the justification. Everyone here, family, friends, investors, you are all witnesses, I announced, projecting my voice. Marcus Thorne and my cousin Vivian Chen systematically stole my life's work. The Aether Project, the architectural design they were using to secure millions in funding, is mine. The funds secured from the Dubai Consortium were funneled directly into this absurd spectacle. I gestured to the ballroom. The truffles? Stolen money. The imported silk? Stolen money. My dress? Stolen money. You are all attending a party paid for by felony fraud. The reaction in the room was electric chaos. People started talking at once. Investors were pulling out phones, furiously calling their legal teams. My own parents were paralyzed with shock. One of the marshals, previously disguised as a waiter, moved towards the table where the wedding gifts were piled high. The marshal opened a box and pulled out a stack of envelopes. All cash and negotiable instruments are subject to immediate seizure as assets derived from illegal proceeds, the marshal stated clearly, starting to document the envelopes. Marcus finally found his voice. It was desperate, pleading. She's lying. It's all a lie. She's jealous. Her design was derivative. I refined it. I made it usable. He was grasping for any straw. I lifted my hand. Marcus, your refinements were just the theft of my structural calculations. I have the original, time-stamped files. I have your internal chat logs mocking my ambition. I pressed the remote again. The screen shifted to a detailed comparison graphic. It was two architectural blueprints side by side. OSC left, Lara Chen, Aether Project, timestamp 2024-03-12. Right, Marcus Group, Crown Tower. Timestamp 2024-03-15. The side-by-side comparison showed undeniable, exact, line-for-line replication. The investors went silent. They knew architecture. They recognized the cold, hard proof of IP theft. A marshal returned with a pair of handcuffs. Mr. Thorne, you are resisting a federal officer. Let's go. Marcus struggled. He shouted my name. He looked at me, not with hatred, but with pure, stupefied disbelief that I, the little architect, could have orchestrated this perfect public collapse. Vivian was hysterical. She tried to run. The marshal grabbed her gently, but firmly. Miss Chen, you are also required to come with us. As they were escorted away, I pulled the final, signed annulment papers from the inside pocket of my jacket. I ripped them dramatically in half, scattering the pieces onto the marble floor where Marcus had stood moments ago. The marriage is void, I announced to the silent room. I felt a slight smile touch my lips. The revenge was complete. The architectural integrity had been restored. My Aether Project was mine again. The moment Marcus and Vivian were escorted out, the tension broke. It wasn't a party anymore. It was a massive, high-end legal consultation event. The guests, largely powerful people, realized they had been witnessing a multi-million-dollar corporate takedown. Instead of fleeing, they rushed toward me. The investors wanted to know about the Aether Project. They wanted to know if the design was available. My retired mentor, Professor Davies, stepped out from the crowd where he had been disguised as a guest. He immediately assumed the role of my chief legal counsel. This Chen is not currently taking on new clients, Davies announced to the throng, but the intellectual property is secure. The Aether Project will be moving forward under a new ethical entity. My family was devastated, but they rallied immediately. My mother, initially crying about the ruined wedding, became fiercely proud. My father, who had never fully trusted Marcus, looked at me with open respect. You didn't just survive, Alara, my father whispered, hugging me tight while marshals documented the remaining assets. You demolished them. You fought like a dragon. The wedding venue was technically still under injunction for several hours. The marshals meticulously documented every last detail: the cars outside, the expensive sound system, the unspent catering budget. The full cost of the wedding was used as evidence of the ill-gotten gains. I stripped off the Vera Wang gown in the bridal suite. It felt like shedding a skin. It smelled faintly of expensive perfume and massive fraud. I didn't hate the dress, but it was tainted. I packaged it up and later sold it to a high-end consignment auction for charity. I used the money to start a scholarship for female architecture students. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for Marcus and Vivian. The initial hearing was brutal. Marcus tried to claim that I gifted him the IP. The chat logs, however, showed clear intent to defraud. The wire transfers showed the stolen corporate funds paying for personal extravagances. That sealed their fate. They were facing multiple felony charges. Bail was set prohibitively high. The Marcus Group LLC was dissolved within 2 weeks. The Dubai contract, the one based on my Aether Project, was immediately voided. The investment consortium, after a review of the evidence, eventually became the core investor in my new firm. Vivian faced a double crisis, legal and familial. My parents formally disowned her. Her name was ruined in the local social circuit. Her career as an event planner was over. She was last seen moving in with an aunt in another state, facing massive legal fees and restitution orders. Marcus's reputation was not just damaged, it was vaporized. He couldn't practice architecture or finance again. He was radioactive. His assets were liquidated to cover the initial fines and legal costs. He lost the Porsche, the high-rise condo, and every last scrap of credibility. I officially launched my firm, Aether Design Collective. My original Aether project, now fully secured and legally clean, became the centerpiece of my portfolio. I had a clear conscience, a massive contract, and the respect of my peers. The pain of the betrayal never entirely faded, but it became fuel. It taught me to protect my creative integrity fiercely. The one thing Marcus gave me was an unforgettable lesson in business. He taught me the necessity of having a brilliant lawyer on speed dial. He taught me that trust must always be verified. And he taught me that the best revenge isn't loud or violent. It's cold, legal, and executed with architectural precision. I never regretted a moment of that wedding day. It was the moment I finally took back my life, my career, and my genius. It wasn't my wedding, it was my grand opening, and it was spectacular.